This episode is brought to you by Paramount Plus. Get in, loser! Mean Girls is now streaming on Paramount Plus. Join Katie Heron as she meets the plastics in Tina Fey's new twist on the modern classic. Get ready for more of the rumors, backstabbing, and jokes you loved from the original movie with some fetch surprises. Rated PG-13. Wear pink and head to ParamountPlus.com to try it free.
What does filmed for IMAX mean? It isn't just a movie that'll look great on IMAX's screens. It means that hiding from a sandstorm feels like fear in every flicker. And every triumph is felt in every sound wave. And the things we've only imagined, you can truly experience those too. That's what filmed for IMAX means. Get tickets to experience Dune Part 2 now and IMAX's exclusive expanded aspect ratio.
This episode is brought to you by Paramount Plus. An unlikely friendship begins in the Paramount Plus original movie Little Wing, starring Brooklyn Prince with Kelly Riley and Brian Cox. Reeling from her parents' divorce, Caitlin steals a valuable bird to save her home, but instead forms a bond with the owner, leading to a new outlook on life. Little Wing, now streaming exclusively on Paramount Plus. Head to ParamountPlus.com to try it free. Rated PG-13.
Remember a time when Will Smith was box office gold? Kevin Kline was a versatile actor able to walk the fine line between drama and comedy, and Kenneth Branagh was lauded for his Shakespearean thespianism. Then 1999 happened, and much like Y2K itself, disaster was guaranteed to strike. Or was it? Saddle up, partners. It's time to travel to the Wild Wild West to see if it smells like horse manure or if it's not that bad. Welcome one and all to It's Not That Bad, the podcast that looks for A grades in B movies. Now, every now and then on our episodes, we'll name drop a movie and be like, oh, by the way, it qualifies. We're going to have to come back to that eventually. Today is one of those days because we are talking about Wild West. And here, making his first return back to the show since the Mortal Kombat episode, Ruben Chavez is back. Ruben, how you doing, man? Welcome back.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be back. I'm doing well. And again, I seem to have a soft spot for 90s movies that bombed at the box office and were generally horribly received. So it's that's my theme, I guess. But yeah, happy to talk this movie.
It's interesting that you say bombed at the box office because we're going to drop the box office information a little bit later. But as I was doing my research for this film, they put something out there and it's not confirmed. It's rumored that this happened, but you have to understand that at the time that this film was out, movies like American Pie and South Park, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut were also in theaters. Those movies, of course, were little more maturely rated. This one is rated PG-13. There were rumors and reports that people were buying tickets to this movie so they could get into the theater so they could sneak in to go see South Park.
I did read that. That was a big, that they thought that was happening with kids specifically, obviously getting into a PG-13 movie. And that's one of the reasons they did a big crackdown on monitoring the ticket sales and making sure people couldn't sneak in. So this movie has an impact beyond just what we saw on the screen. If the unsubstantiated rumors are true that this was a gateway for people to see South Park for the first time.
Which I find funny because if you've seen South Park Bigger, Longer, and Uncut, which is hilarious.
So good.
Part of the reason why people were trying to get the Terrence and Phillip movie banned was because kids were sneaking into the theaters to watch the Terrence and Phillip film. So really, Wild Wild West just proved that South Park was brilliant.
So are you saying that South Park is similar to The Simpsons, that they can see the future as they were making the movie? They're like, this is going to happen?
Between South Park, The Simpsons, and 30 Rock, you need not learn Nostradamus. All you have to do apparently is watch network television.
Yeah, that's good. A lot less reading, so I'm all in on that.
All right, but we're not talking about South Park. As much as I would love to, that movie does not qualify. This one, however, does. But before we get into Wild Wild West, it is time to take this late 1990s classic, he says with quotation fingers, and trailerize it.
In the late 1990s, Hollywood looked to the classics of the small screen for comedy inspiration. The Addams Family, the Beverly Hillbillies, the Brady Bunch. But one film will take that formula, add an abnormal amount of spider love, and spit out something to make people sit up and say, what the f*** was that? Will Smith stops fighting aliens and saddles up in Wild Wild West. He's James West, a wild lawman in the wilds of the western frontier, wildly looking for the wildly outlandish mastermind Dr. Arliss Lovelace. Along for the wild ride is Artemis Gordon, who's so brilliant he uses Bugs Bunny logic on everyone and costumes his way through every encounter. Who knew a wig and a bad falsetto could actually work? Well, Bugs did. But I digress. Together, they'll try to save the president, save the country, but who will save them from the script? Will Smith and Kevin Kline star in Wild Wild West. Rated PG-13 for ponies and gadgets.
That was good. That was good. Yeah. That I don't think there's a better trailer for Wild Wild West than that.
Right? Forget everybody else. Just come to the show here. It should be done. Like, as I'm watching this, I'm like, so let me get this straight. Kevin Kline is dressed up as a woman, and everyone thinks that he's a woman because he's poorly dressed like a woman. Bugs Bunny apparently predicted the future as well.
Yeah, again, between Looney Tunes, 30 Rock, Simpsons, and South Park, no one needs to read Nostradamus. Those guys have it covered.
Right. Also, by the way, you don't need classical music at appreciation. Just watch Looney Tunes and you'll be fine.
Looney Tunes. That's all of the first orchestra pieces and all those Mozart's arrangements. I heard them on Looney Tunes. So.
Kill the Wobbit. Kill the Wobbit.
Exactly.
Hey, Pantheon listeners, Christian Swain here. You caught me just finishing up some editing on Getting Real with John and Beth. I want to share my first experience with Factor meals for you. I think you'll find this interesting because I bet the same thing happens to you. I had just received my first shipment from Factor Meals the other day, and I was excited to try one of the prepared restaurant quality meals for myself. Anyway, I was working away and noticed it was very late, and it was my night to make dinner. I jumped up and headed to the kitchen, went to grab the ingredients for the dish I was going to make, and realized I was missing a prime ingredient. Well, I could make a run to the store, or I could make one of my new Factor meals. Actually, the choice was easy. I grabbed a cavatappi, an Italian-style pork ragu with garlic broccoli, heated the oven per instructions, and minutes later was enjoying a very delicious, nutritious, and dietitian-approved meal. It really was everything Factor Meals said it would be. No prep, no mess meals. Factor Meals are 100% ready to heat and eat. Take it from me and head to factormeals.com/Pantheon50 and use the code Pantheon50 to get 50% off. That's factormeals.com/Pantheon50 and use the code Pantheon50 to get 50% off. Hey, Pantheon listeners, Christian Swain again with something every podcast listener and music junkie needs to hear. As I'm sure you can guess, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I also listen to a lot of music, so having high-quality headphones and earbuds are absolutely critical to my day. Oh, and I have numerous pairs. In fact, I have a junk drawer of used devices that have bitten the dust, so I've tried them all. Recently, I was sent a pair of earbuds by Raycon, and the first thing I noticed was the cost. Looks like their products are about half the price of other premium brands. Okay, that's cool. And the reviews seem pretty stellar. Okay, checks that box. So I got my Raycon everyday earbuds. A nice packaging to open, and what I immediately noticed were the pack of ear tips for sizing. I'll tell you, I have small ear canals. I know, a flaw. So to see choices for the best fit, especially while exercising, oh yeah. And yes, they were immediately comfortable. Sound quality was great too. Plus, I have 3 EQ options that I love because I like more bass in my music and less in the podcasts. 8 hours of playtime for the battery is great as well. Surround sound, noise canceling, and awareness mode all included. I think I'm in business. And I just realized I've had them in all day. Like I said, super comfortable. Go to buyraycon.com/Pantheon today to get 20% off your Raycon order plus free shipping. That's right. You'll get 20% off and free shipping at buyraycon.com/Pantheon.
All right, let's get into who's in this film. The movie stars Will Smith, Kevin Kline, Kenneth Branagh, Selma Hayek, M. Emmett Walsh, and Ted Levine. However, there is quite the almost starred in this one. But let's start with someone who was offered a role, but then he turned it down after reading the script, and that is Robert Conrad, who played the original James West in the TV series Wild Wild West. It was offered for him to play President Ulysses S. Grant, but we're going to get into how much Robert Conrad really hated the script a little bit later, but he straight up turned that ish down. Apparently, this movie was going to be very, very different. There was a version of this film being prepped, which would have been written by Shane Black, directed by Richard Donner, and starring Mel Gibson. But then they all went and did Maverick, which I freaking love Maverick. I'm glad they did that. I'm curious what that movie would have looked like had they actually done this. But also, Tom Cruise was also in line for that version, but then he ended up doing Mission Impossible. I don't know about Tom Cruise in a Wild Wild West film.
I think there are some actors that you can't see in a period piece or going back in time. And Tom Cruise is a very modern actor. I don't think, to your point, I can't see him in the Wild Wild West because in my mind of what Tom Cruise is, he's always running very fast to stop some technological advancement that's going to destroy the world. And maybe that's a bit Mission Impossible, but even in Jerry Maguire, he's running with a cell phone, right? So I just think he's at his best in the modern day. I don't want to see Tom Cruise put back in time.
Well, clearly you didn't watch Far and Away, which he starred with Nicole Kidman in, because that one is a historical drama.
I did not watch that. I thought you were going to say The Valkyrie, because he's in that too, right? He plays the...
Yeah, but that's more World War II era.
Yeah.
But Far and Away, that's more the settlement of the West in America kind of story.
Yeah. He got his chance to play the Wild Wild West character.
Exactly.
Probably very different than what he would have done here, but...
A smaller role here, and I'm going to apologize if I mess up this name, but remember, I'm an idiot Canadian in a basement with a microphone, so don't look to me for any accuracy whatsoever. Pina Rouge was originally the girl who was making it with Will Smith in the water tower. Now, they actually shot this scene, but then, for some reason, they reshot it with Garcelle Beauvais without telling Pina Rouge, who apparently, according to IMDb, found out at the premiere of the film. That's gotta suck.
Yeah, that's horrible because it's not even a big role, obviously, right? So you're really you're going to this premiere to see yourself on screen for 5 minutes, I think, in total is the screen time. And then you're not even in it. You probably told everybody, I'm in this movie, so excited, my little first big break. And they reshot it and they didn't even tell you. That would feel awful.
You know what's funny? I can relate.
Oh, really?
I can. Okay, story time. Let me tell the story here. So there was a movie out there called House of Luck, Luck spelled L-U-K, and it stars Pat Morita and Michael Moriarty. And it was filming at the college that I was at the time. And I just happened to be, sitting around the hallway, and they're like, "Hey, do you want to come pop into this scene? We need an extra." I'm like, "Okay, I'll be an extra in a film. Why not?" Right? And when they were filming the scene, and all I was working in a TV studio. That was my role. That was it. I pushed the switcher buttons because in the scene they were filming a TV commercial for this car salesman. Now, when they filmed the scene, they had me try a few lines. Clearly, I was such an impeccable actor with excellent thespian-like dialect and delivery that they gave those lines to somebody else. And I found out when I went to the theater, and I'm like, "Oh, that's not me talking."
That's
not at
tough.
all.
That they were probably just worried you would outshine the stars. They're like, if we let him speak, everyone in the crowd will be wondering, why is the movie not about that character? Let's dig into that.
There was a monkey scratching his ass in that scene. I wasn't upstaging anybody. But yeah, no, it was like I said these lines and I said to my girlfriend at the time, who's my wife now, my lovely wife Carrie, and I'm like, yeah, no, I said lines in the film, and we get to the theater, and we're like, they took my line, they gave it to somebody else.
That sucks.
So
it's their loss.
So Pinot or Rouge, I feel your pain.
Yeah, there you go. You are not alone in the struggle.
Which, for the record, it's actually a really, really good film. I'm not saying this to diss on the film, but House of Luck is a great film. Go find it and watch it. Great little Canadian film. In the role of Rita Escobar, the role apparently was originally offered to Jennifer Lopez, and then she turned it down. Then they offered it to Penelope Cruz, who also turned it down, and apparently Asia Argento was also considered. So clearly, they had a look in mind for Rita Escobar.
Yeah, it was going to be a Latin American woman one way or another, whether it was Jennifer Lopez, Penelope Cruz. I think they made the right choice. One of the things, because obviously I first watched this movie when I was a kid, and that's why I have such a interesting attachment to it. In fact, I remember there was a Burger King tie-in where they had like the toys in their Happy Meals were stuff from Wild Wild West. So I had the James West glasses that I got one time, and I would wear them all the time. So that's how much I love this movie. But I felt like Salma Hayek's character could have done more or been more involved with how great of an actress she is and how charismatic she is when she is on screen. I felt like they kind of sidelined her a bit, but I don't think that they miscast. She's a gorgeous, gorgeous actress, and she's funny. I think whenever she's in a comedy, I enjoy what she brings to it. So I'm happy with I'm happy that they lucked into a good selection, I guess.
Right.
Because I don't think Jennifer Lopez would have been.
No. I mean, we'll get to Salma Hayek a little bit later, but yeah, I think they definitely had a look in mind, and they nailed it with Salma Hayek. In the role of Artemis Gordon, of course, played by Kevin Kline, apparently George Clooney was at one point slated to be Artemis Gordon, but then he turned it down. But also under consideration were Tim Curry, Johnny Depp, and Matthew McConaughey. Like, that feels almost scattershot approach to the role of Artemis Gordon. I mean, I could see going from George Clooney to Kevin Kline, but Tim Curry and Johnny Depp and Matthew freaking McConaughey?
I was going to say, when you listed off those names, it felt like they didn't have a direction with the character. They're like, whatever actor we pick is going to get a real chance to put their own spin on it. Because what's the common thread between George Clooney and Matthew McConaughey, especially back then? Yeah, I don't know. That's a strange one. I don't think they really knew what they wanted to do with the character. And I agree that George Clooney, Kevin Kline, like, you can see that link.
Mm-hmm. Even
yeah,
Tim Curry as well. Like, I could see going from Tim Curry to Kevin Kline very, very easily. But Johnny Depp and Matthew McConaughey, not so much.
No, absolutely not. And Johnny Depp and Matthew McConaughey, I feel like would have taken too much away from the star in a weird way, because they're very like, they have a lot of charisma, and I don't know if they can play the sidekick role quite as well. I mean, the Lone Ranger probably also qualifies in this. It's not that bad. So,
ooh, you're really stretching the title of the show there. If it's not that bad.
I know. So we've seen how he does as a sidekick to a cowboy. Not very good for Johnny Depp.
I mean, it's not like we haven't talked about Johnny Depp on this show before, because remember, dear listeners, we did an episode on yoga hosers. You're welcome.
Talk about Canadian content.
Right. The movie was directed by Barry Sonnenfeld, who, of course, directed Men in Black. So, big budget, he's got it. And budget he had. The movie had a budget of $170 million. And according to IMDb.com, domestically, it made $113 million. So, lost money domestically, but worldwide, $222 million of people basically trying to go see South Park. When it was released on the July 2nd, 1999 weekend, it of course debuted at number one with $27 million. There were two other major debuts that weekend. In eighth, Summer of Sam debuted with $5.9 million. And in number 4, South Park Bigger, Longer, and Uncut with $11.3 million, which of course is going to be dialed back because of the R rating for that film. But it should be noted that South Park was actually in 2,128 theaters as opposed to Wild Wild West, which was in 3,342 theaters. So obviously Wild Wild West was going to make more money, but on a per theater average, it's not as big a discrepancy as one might think.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's not as big a discrepancy as they want it.
Right. Now, there are some good accolades for this film. At the Alma Awards, Selma Hayek was nominated for Outstanding Actress in a Feature Film. She lost to Cameron Diaz for Any Given Sunday. And at the 6th Blockbuster Entertainment Awards, hey, remember Blockbuster? It was a thing then. Kenneth Branagh was nominated for Favorite Villain. He lost to Mike Myers as Dr. Evil in Austin Powers' The Spy Who Shagged Me. Will Smith and Kevin Kline were nominated for Favorite Action Team. They lost to Mark Wahlberg, George Clooney, and Ice Cube for Three Kings. Selma Hayek won for Favorite Supporting Actress in an Action Film, and both Wild Wild West by Will Smith and Balamos by Enrique Iglesias were nominated for Favorite Song from a Movie. They lost to Music of My Heart from Music of the Heart by Gloria Estefan featuring NSYNC. But now, Ruben, strap in, because this film racked up some of those other awards, and we're going to be here for a bit.
The fun awards.
Oh, yes. First, we start with the 22nd Stinkers Bad Movie Awards, where this film led the pack with 10 nominations. Before we get to the ones that it won, Barry Sonnenfeld was nominated for Worst Director. He lost to Bob Clark from Baby Geniuses, and yes, we covered that one recently too. Kevin Kline was nominated for Worst Actor. He lost to Robin Williams for Bicentennial Man and Jacob the Liar. Will Smith and Kevin Kline were both nominated for Worst On-Screen Couple. They lost to Siegfried and Roy for Siegfried and Roy the Magic Box. Whew. Wild Wild West was nominated for Worst Song or Song Performance featured in a film or its end credits. It lost to, and I'm not even kidding you on this one, No Tears for Caesar by William Shatner and the Rated R from the movie Free Enterprise. And if you think that I'm just making shit up here, I have that movie on VHS.
There you go.
The movie was also nominated for Least Special Effects, lost to Baby Geniuses, and nominated for Biggest Disappointment, lost to the Blair Witch Project. Now, Blair Witch Project, how is that a disappointment? That film made millions upon millions of dollars on like a next to nothing budget. How is that even in there for Biggest Disappointment?
That's something that's aged poorly. I think now the Blair Witch Project was lauded as like the first of those found footage movies, and this really happened. So definitely didn't deserve to be there. Wild Wild West, way more of a disappointment.
Well, that's the thing. With a $170 million budget, yes, it's going to be a big disappointment. Blair Witch Project may be on a box office to budget return, maybe one of the most successful films ever.
Yeah.
Now, I haven't done the math on it. I'm just saying that when you take a look at how much they put into that film made bank exponentially so.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they also won some awards at the Stinkers. One for Worst Picture, one for Most Painful Unfunny Comedy, one for Worst Screenplay for a film grossing over $100 million using Hollywood math, and one for Worst Resurrection of a TV Show. We kind of made fun of that in the Trailerize. Listen to who it beat out. Dudley Do-Right, Inspector Gadget, The Mod Squad, and My Favorite Martian.
Wow.
Like, clearly, taking old school TV shows and bringing them back, that was a 90s thing. And you know what? Like, I'm gonna maybe side with Dudley Do-Right and My Favorite Martian being on this list. Inspector Gadget has its charms.
Yeah,
it does.
I agree. I think that's a fun movie. And yeah, I don't think that belongs on that list either. I
Oh,
would agree with that.
oh God, no. But then, of course, there are the Razzies, the 20th Golden Raspberry Awards, where this film once again led the pack with 9 nominations. It won for Worst Picture, won for Worst Screenplay, and won for Worst Original Song for Wild Wild West, but also nominated Kevin Kline for Worst Actor. He lost to Adam Sandler in Big Daddy. Kenneth Branagh was nominated for Worst Supporting Actor. He lost to Ahmed Best as Jar Jar Binks in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace.
Oh, no.
Selma Hayek was nominated for Worst Supporting Actress for this and Dogma, and Kevin Kline was also nominated for Worst Supporting Actress. We mentioned the Bugs Bunny logic. There you go. They both lost to Denise Richards for The World Is Not Enough. Kevin Kline and Will Smith won for Worst Screen Couple, and Barry Sonnenfeld won for Worst Director. So maybe not necessarily the film you want to clean up in, but we mentioned Robert Conrad earlier. He was on hand at the Razzies to accept 3 of the awards as a way of showing how much he disliked this movie.
I respect that so much. I'm somebody that can get behind someone hating at an elite level, and that's what that is. He's like, I want to make it a point that I dislike everything about this movie and what it stands for, to the point that I will accept their non-awards.
Like, when you're celebrating its failures, you have taken trolling to a whole new level.
Yeah.
Bravo, Robert Conrad, for just making one of the best notes I've ever had in researching for this show. And we're over 120 episodes in. So bravo, good sir. Bravo. But the reason why we are here, not because Ruben has excellent taste in films, is the critic score. Over at Metacritic, this film has a Metascore of 40, and over at Rotten Tomatoes, the audience score is a 28%. The tomatometer is a measly, paltry 16%. I'm not gonna lie. I am surprised the audience score is as low compared to the Metascore as it is.
Yeah, it's pretty low. I don't know. I feel like this movie, maybe people are just always watching it and being like, it could have been better. And I think whenever you see Will Smith, especially in the 90s, I think it's worth remembering that before this point, everything he touched was dynamite. The Men in Black series was great. It was like, if you get Will Smith to star in your movie and make a song, oh, that's gold. We're going to sell so much merchandise. We're going to do so well in the box office. It is strange that the tomatometer is so low for the audience score, but
well, the tomatometer I'm not really as shocked about, because yes, it's a big budget film with a big budget director and 3 Oscar winners on your cast and an Oscar nominee to boot. The weight of expectation couldn't be any heavier for this film.
Yeah, and it didn't do enough to support the expectation. But I don't know. I guess that's what the heart of this show is, to look at a movie and say like, oh, it didn't reach expectations. What were the good parts in it? I do think that within those 4 actors specifically that we're highlighting, the 3 Oscar winners, Will Smith, Kevin Kline, Kenneth Branagh, and the Oscar nominee and Salma Hayek, like, there were good moments and there was good little bits. And watching it again now as an adult with a fresh perspective, it had been a few years since I'd watched it. All I could think was like, you have that much talent, and it just, every time it feels like it's getting going, you're undercutting it, or it's not really well done. And that expectation is sort of crumbled under, I guess. And maybe it was too many cooks in the kitchen scenario, or I know I went through some reshoots and some rewrites, but yeah, the expectations that were set definitely were not met, and maybe it was just, I don't know, no real direction.
Oh, there's direction, but we're going to get to that in a little bit. But let's start with, of course, the top of the bill. Will Smith as Captain James West. So you mentioned, of course, Men in Black. And of course, prior to that was Independence Day as well. So like, you're right. Like, the 1990s was literally Will Smith had the Midas touch at the box office. How was he in this film for you?
I thought he was really good, but I'm a Will Smith fan. I must admit my biases. I'm the type of person that if he's in a movie, I know I'm gonna like every time he's on screen. I do think that it's funny because watching this movie, I get why Quentin Tarantino thought of casting him in Django Unchained, because there was a coolness to which he brought to the character, but it was a different coolness than he had in Men in Black and in Independence Day. In those ones, he's kind of like a a hot shot. He's the young gun. And in this one, they kind of tried to make him be a little more. He's the established one. He's the Tommy Lee Jones. His reputation precedes him. He was a decorated war hero. He's clearly very perceptive. The scene where he knows that it's a fake Ulysses S. Grant. I mean, it's played by the same guy, funny enough, but fake Ulysses S. Grant, and he points it out. I think it's supposed to give you this air of, well, this isn't classic Will Smith that he doesn't know what he's talking about. Yes, he still goes in guns blazing, but he has a bit of intelligence there. He's a steady hand. And maybe they should have just leaned into what he does best, which is kind of just being cool and casual and more of the upstart. But I do think he did well. I think his chemistry, he's such an easy actor to work off of because I feel like he's always just having a good time. And it never felt like he was dragging his feet in the movie, to me personally.
See, I mean, I find it interesting that you say that he's more kind of the Tommy Lee Jones character from Men in Black. I still think he's Agent J in this. I still think he is almost the same character as he was in Men in Black, but now it's just Men in Black cowboy hats. But I think the thing is that, yes, does he Will Smith all over the place? Absolutely. But it's before it becomes almost a trope. Like, you know, before he starts to Gary Sinise his way through things and just basically is himself no matter what the role is. You could really make an argument about that for a movie like I, Robot, where he's just Will Smithing all over the place.
Yeah.
Here, I think it actually works because James West is a much more cocksure, gunslinging kind of lawman. So his personality in this really does kind of work well in this. The other thing too is you have to keep in mind this isn't like a modern Western feel, right? This isn't supposed to be like Unforgiven. This isn't supposed to be like a No Country for Old Men kind of thing. It's a freaking popcorn comedy film. It's a comedy action film that's meant to be big and loud and bombastic. You're not going to Wild Wild West for nuance at all. You want big things to go boom. And do they do that? Yes, they absolutely do. And Will Smith, I think, considering everything that's going on around him, he's actually much more dialed back than you would think for him.
Yeah, and I guess that's why I didn't want to say he was playing Jay straight up, because I do see that bit of dialed back. And to your point, like, I agree. This isn't a movie where you were expecting nuance like the bad guys are so obviously the bad guys. It's the losing side in the Civil War. And when I was a kid, I didn't know much about the Civil War, but looking at it with adult eyes, you're like, oh yeah, the South, the bad guys that we've all agree are the bad guys. So there's not really like gray area. And yet they do try to force some of these more emotional, somber moments with no real buildup, like the scene where they're at the campfire with him and Artemis. And it feels so out of place because 5 minutes ago we were seeing Will Smith's head near his belt buckle. And then now we're having a real somber look at Will Smith's backstory that we had no real framework for. So it does feel like they kept trying to be like, yes, Will Smith, you can do your Will Smith thing. We obviously hired you to be Will Smith, but don't Will Smith too hard because we still want this to be a somewhat straight up Western in like a dark way almost, but it doesn't really play.
In a weird steampunk kind of way. You know what, before we get to the rest of the cast, because we were talking about the script and how, you know, you had these moments, you know, lots of moments of levity with sprinkled in moments of seriousness. So I think this actually is the better time to talk about this rather than to double back after we get through the rest of the cast here. So the script is written by Jim and John Thomas, who are best known for writing the Predator movie, like the Arnold Schwarzenegger one. And when you take a look at the films that they are listed on as writer, none of them are really comedy films. And I think there's the thing, like we talked about how there were rewrites and reshoots and whatnot. At times it feels like it's a comedy movie written by people who don't write comedies. To the other token as well, since we just finished talking about Will Smith here, of course it's based off of the old Wild Wild West TV show. Now, I will admit I never watched the TV show. My mother's watched it. She said the TV show was a lot of fun. But obviously you have Will Smith taking on the lead role, so it's a bit of a race swap kind of thing. I get it. I understand. I don't care. I do not care. The script clearly cared way too much because it felt like there were so many references to the fact that, hey, by the way, did you know that Will Smith is black? Because he is. And they're being really didactic about it. And after a while, I'm like, okay, like the little, one-liner, one-upmanship between him and Loveless when they first meet, that I can get behind because it is very much a gamesmanship between the two and how they're both picking. But after a while, it's like, okay, we get it. We get it. No, stop pointing it out. You feel like Austin Powers pointing at the mole going, mole, 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 mole.
It does get kind of beat into, I agree. And I think the scene you highlighted is the scene that works the best in when him and Loveless have that little tete-a-tete. They're playing their mind games and they're obviously both being threatening and attacking, but in a polite way because they're in a crowd and in a room of people. But yeah, it does. And again, it shows you that it feels like two different movies were slapped together. Like there's the movie where we're talking about a black cowboy that served in the Union and it's real, gritty, and it's about race relations in America as it was expanding. And then there's the comedy with Will Smith where he's just Will Smith. And you could make those same arguments in terms of like, a black person in a role that society isn't accustomed to in Men in Black or in even Independence Day. Like those things could have been there, but they don't make that the focal point in a way that's weird. And this movie definitely did, because throughout even when they're dressing up to go to that party, right? He points out, like they do a little bit where he pretends to be his slave basically to Kevin Kline. And it's like, that didn't need to be there. We're not even thinking about that right now. Like Kevin Kline's whole thing is costumes. That's all he was doing. Like, it's like, he's the costume guy. Do a different joke there and it probably would have worked better.
Yeah. It just seemed to me like they were, it was the point of the mole thing and don't look at it. But you're calling it out. And like I said, I get that scene because of course, like, West is, making half the man jokes at Loveless and because it's that one upmanship and that's where you needed to leave it at. You don't need to run that line of joking all the way through. But let's get back to the cast here. Kevin Kline, who played both Artemis Gordon and President Ulysses S. Grant. How was he for you?
I thought he was good. And again, when you look at the ones that were almost cast, I don't think that there's someone that jumps out as being obviously better. One, I will say that I'm sad. I think Tim Curry is a phenomenal actor. And I think Tim Curry can do a great mix of like being a straight man and being just over the top, hilarious and goofy. I would have liked to see his take on it because I think Artemis is a silly character at his heart because he's got all these gadgets. So it would have been fun to see a bit more of, again, same as you, I never watched the original show. So I don't know how cool Artemis is supposed to be in opposite James West, but it would have been fun to have more of a mad scientist vibe that I think Tim Curry brought to it. But I think Kevin Kline did good. As both Ulysses S. Grant and as Artemis, I think he did all right. He held his own. And I think when you're the co-star to Will Smith, you just kind of got to give him the lane to Will Smith about. And I don't think he prevented him from doing that.
Well, I mean, Kevin Kline, and I need to put this out there. I freaking love Kevin Kline as an actor. I think he's phenomenally talented, even in the movies where the movie doesn't fare as well, like this one, and when it came to the critics. But even a movie like Fierce Creatures, and I get Fierce Creatures is going to get a lot of comparisons to A Fish Called Wanda because it's the exact same core cast in a completely different story, playing completely different characters. It's almost like they were trying to make the next wave of Monty Python with those four. Kevin Kline works well in an ensemble, and it works well here as well. I think he actually benefits from being the straight guy of the comedy duo because he gets the better gags and the better throwaway lines for sure.
Oh yeah, he brings most of the humor that lands, and that's because of how he plays it. And again, I do agree that he makes a good straight man to Jim West, and he has most of the best punchlines that come off.
Oh yeah. And I mean the thing is, like, anyone who liked A Fish Called Wanda, you're going to love him in this because again, he's actually a bit more dialed back from that character. The same thing with Fierce Creatures, right? And for the record, Fierce Creatures does qualify for It's Not That Bad. So much as we did with this movie, one day we're going to cover Fierce Creatures. It's going to happen. And I'm going to sit there and just say, I love this freaking movie. It's awesome. The critics suck. And I'm saying kind of the same thing about this film. As a big popcorn flick, the movie is fun as hell. Don't look to it for seriousness, even though you are getting very good comedic acting from someone he's able to walk that fine line between comedy and drama and bring both to the opposite role. And it's great. I freaking love it. Selma Hayek, who played Rita Escobar, and we talked about her a little bit earlier, and you're right. She is extraordinarily talented. She's a hilarious actress as well. Like comedically, go watch Dogma. And I recognize that she was nominated for Worst Supporting Actress for this and Dogma. Don't care. Dogma's awesome. Her role on 30 Rock just goes to show exactly how funny she is. And again, 30 Rock, proving it's all right again. But how was Selma Hayek in here?
I love Salma Hayek. Again, she's one of my favorite actresses. I had a crush on her growing up. I have a crush on her still. She's a gorgeous woman. But I also think, to your point, she's very funny, effortlessly so. When she's on screen, she's just wonderful to see act, and she plays off of these two guys really well. Her scenes with Artemis and Jim, where she kind of plays them both for fools and leans into the I'm just a damsel in distress thing. It's funny. It's great. And I think Selma Hayek is an actress who, when given a role and given the parameters of what she has to execute, can do it at an extremely high level. And again, one of my complaints about the movie is how underutilized I feel that she was. She could have been in more scenes. It should have been.
Yeah, I mean, let's take a look at the two main ones who were considered for this role. Apparently turned the role down. Jennifer Lopez, of course, obviously she's, becoming a bigger actress. She is Jenny from the Block at this point, right?
She is Jenny from the Block.
But the thing is, she was also in the movie Out of Sight, which of course eventually led to the Karen Sisco TV series starring Carla Gugino, again, based on the Elmore Leonard novel. Out of Sight and starring George Clooney. Out of Sight was a very, very good film, and we're still 1 year away from Gigli. So, we're still on the good vibes here for Jennifer Lopez, but I don't see her as a comedic actress in the way as I take a look at a Selma Hayek. You want to put her in a rom-com, like a Made in Manhattan, you go right ahead. You want to put her in a movie like Out of Sight, go right ahead. But I don't see her as straight comedy actress like Selma Hayek. Same thing with Penelope Cruz.
Yeah, I agree with you. And again, those being the two choices that were like right beside that turned it down. When I think of Jennifer Lopez, I think of rom-coms like Made in Manhattan. Sometimes I think of Gigli, even though I try not to. But she also likes more of a dramatic turn. She does the one, like she's not somebody that screams like funny. And it's not that she can't be funny. It's just not the kind of funny that works for a blockbuster comedy where it's all just like these kind of quick jokes and supposed to be real punchy and fast and over the top. She's not over the top in that sense. She can be over the top dramatically. She can be over the top in love, but I've never seen that lean to her or that ambition to be funny in the way that Salma Hayek is funny. And Penelope Cruz is the same way. I love Penelope Cruz in the dramatic role. Whenever she's in movies, it feels like she's playing some form of a real dark and nuanced character, like feisty and really strong. I don't think it would have worked as well here, where Salma Hayek can do both.
See, for the action part of this and, the lighter feel to it, 6 years after this movie came out, Sahara came out with Matthew McConaughey, who of course was considered for the Artemis Gordon role, but also with Penelope Cruz based on the Clive Cussler novel. Now, I've got my thoughts on that film and that casting, Penelope Cruz was actually really good in that film. She fit the Clive Cussler, for lack of a better term, damsel role. And I say that knowing that I've read a ton of Clive Cussler novels. Looking at Penelope Cruz in that, and of course you have to deal with it in hindsight, I could have seen Penelope Cruz take on this role, but I don't think it would have been as effective as the way Salma Hayek played her.
I agree. And I think it's just they're two different actresses, even though they're very similar in what they've done and kind of some of their career. But Selma just brings something unique to the role that I don't think the other two could have brought. But Penelope Cruz would have been a better fit for me for sure, because I do think she has more of that in her. Jenny from the Block doesn't scream this kind of role to me.
No, not in the slightest at all.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
Does Monday at the office feel like a storm? Not with Microsoft Copilot. That feeling when Copilot gets everyone up to speed instantly? It's sunny again. When Copilot simplifies complex data so your teams can act, that sun's shining on a beach. And when Copilot uncovers hidden insights, you're on that beach with your people, and you find buried treasure. That's Microsoft Copilot. Learn more at Microsoft.com/AI for all.
Kenneth Branagh, who of course played Dr. Arliss Lovelace. And yes, I am talking about Kenneth Branagh. Director of Thor, Kenneth Branagh. Shakespearean thespian, Kenneth Branagh. As Dr. Arliss Lovelace. I'm just going to let you take the stage here. Kenneth Branagh for you.
I mean, again, I grew up watching his movies in English class because he's in a lot of Shakespeare stuff. So I've seen him in his various roles. He's a phenomenal actor. And again, this is an example of an actor that's really committing. I read that he did research on the Civil War. It's clear that the accent's a bit crazy. I think even he would say himself that the accent hard to really place in terms of where it would be in America, but he commits to the character of Lovelace and is like super over the top, bombastic, evil, just hateable. Again, in a way, it feels like he gets not enough screen time to really chew the scenery, but whenever he's on, he chews the scenery. Like his fight with Jim West at the end in The Giant Spider, his lines and how he delivers them. He's a phenomenal actor. There's no way to say he acted poorly. If you have a problem with his performance, it's the lines that he was saying, and it's because the dialogue and the writing failed him at times. But as an acting performance, he's great. He'd be great in anything.
I need to point out this quote that was found on imdb.com. Apparently, he has joked that his accent in this movie is, quote unquote, might be the worst American accent performed by a British actor. And I don't know about that. And I think you have to take a look at the character in context and the way it's envisioned, right? We're talking about a, half man, half steampunk creation turned / spider kind of thing, which again, we're going to get to the spiders. Don't you damn well worry. When we first see Lovelace jump out of the cake, jump, he says, quotation figures again, because there ain't no damn legs. It felt like I was watching one of those animations from a Monty Python film. It's like, what the hell is this? He's looking around and it's all goofy. I'm like, it is. It felt very Monty Python-esque. But the thing is, he commits to this through the whole damn thing. And it actually looks like he's having a little bit of fun with it. Like it's very comic booky. It's almost like he's playing a Disney Channel baddie in a big budget film. And I get that may not be the vibe one might want to look for in a $170 million film, but it's fun. And I think that's the thing. It's big. as I was watching this again, in preparation for the show, I'm like, I want my kids to watch this because they would just laugh at the slapstickiness of it.
Yeah, and rewatching it, I still laughed at the slapstickiness of it. Obviously, some of that is nostalgia, but to your point, he's fun as Loveless, and it does feel a little Disney Channel villain, but he commits to it, and it reminds me of Street Fighter, the one with Van Damme, where Raul Julia commits to M. Bison and the speech that he gives. And it's so over the top. And you can tell that they just poured their heart into this character, even though the writing's ridiculous, the scene is ridiculous. It's also comic book at a time where comic book movies and things weren't made. So I don't think that there was the right, no one knew how to make a comic book movie in a way that was gonna not age poorly back then. It felt like, for the most part.
And the funny thing is, I'm so glad you brought up Street Fighter, because we need to draw the comparable here. When you take a look at Raul Julia's performance in that, it's lauded because the rest of the movie is so freaking bad. It really is. It's so bad it's good, and Raul Julia kind of goes over the top. I think the problem with this film is that it's not bad enough for a role like that to just be so Raul Julia-esque. Like, to be able to stand it in a bad film, and I mean a comically bad film, like maybe not necessarily The Room-esque, but a comically bad comedy film. It's almost like the reverse Airplane. And let me explain what I'm talking about here. You've seen Airplane, right?
Yes, I have.
So everyone in Airplane plays it pretty straight, except for Steven Stucker, who's literally playing it like a deranged Looney Tunes crazy character up on speed. And it stands out in not the good way. Here, everyone's playing it kind of fun and goofy, and he is so goofy and over the top, but it's the rest of the film is at that same level as well. It almost feels like the movie needed to be worse and him to be the same for people to sit there and go, okay, well, this movie sucks, but Kenneth Branagh was a ton of fun. Everyone else was a ton of fun, so it didn't stand out as much. That's probably why people were sitting there going, meh.
Yeah, I do think he suffers almost from the movie not being as bad as it could have been. And I would say that for almost every character. Their performances don't look as bad because they're all so charming and good at the roles that they're doing with what they've been given that it raises the level of the movie to the point where there's a frustration where you're just like, oh, this could have been good because you guys are good and you're good actors and you have the tools, but it's not put together. Like half of you are building a barbecue, the other half are building a shed, and we're left with neither a barbecue or a shed.
Yeah. The movie almost feels like it's not good enough to be good, but not bad enough to be great. If that sounds really confusing,
absolutely.
But yeah, like if it was a horrible B type movie, you'd sit there and go, oh, okay, well, this is just cute now.
Yeah, again, to draw comparisons to the other episode I was on, the Mortal Kombat movie, that's just a bad movie. It's over the top, it's silly, it's goofy. You have no illusions of anything. But that's also what makes the Shang Tsung character so good because he plays it so straight, even though everything is ridiculous. And it's such a B movie. You watch that movie, you're like, oh, I get what's happening here. It's fun. I'm not expecting any great performances from anybody. But Wild Wild West doesn't have that feeling.
You do realize we're going to have to bring you back for Mortal Kombat Annihilation one day, right?
Oh, I cannot wait. I want to do that so badly.
I just keep and soon you will not be. It's like, oh my God, that movie's so bad. But
there's a link between those two, between that movie and this movie, because one of Arliss's lovelies plays Queen Sindel in Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
Oh, see, now you have to come back.
Yeah,
now you have to come back. Ted Levine, who played General Bloodbath McGrath, he of the record monophone type ear type thing where it's also leaking as well. So, don't eat before the film. But how was General McGrath?
Again, it feels like he doesn't fit in this movie. He's just a gross character. And I get that was his shtick. But he's kind of set up to be the villain in the first little bit because Jim West wants to get him so badly. It's who he's chasing. He thinks that's who's behind it all. And then that just gets quickly discarded because Loveless has the tank that can just mow everyone down. And Jim West doesn't even kill Bloodbath McGrath ultimately. He just like, he got shot by Loveless more or less and just dies. He was okay. It just, I don't know, maybe I'm being harsh, but it didn't feel like he fit in this movie where it was kind of goofy and over the top. He just kind of felt like generic Civil War bad guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically Starscream to Megatron at this point.
Yeah.
He's there to be annoying, loud, and be dispatched to show who's the boss at that point.
Yeah, it was all leading up to Loveless just kind of being like, you've served your purpose. I don't need you. Leave.
And I think that's actually McGrath's purpose, is to be killed by Loveless, because then Loveless gets to show his ruthlessness in order to be the big bad, in order to basically, yeah, you got me exactly where I need you to get me, and now you're useless. Die.
For me, it just kind of felt like, I get that this is supposed to be big bad moment for Loveless, but I didn't really care about the McGrath character, and maybe that's just my own thing, but it was pretty clear that Loveless was the bad guy the second even in the brief moments he was on screen beforehand, when he crashes the nitroglycerin cart into the saloon that Jim West and Artemis are in. So I get what they were playing at. It didn't work for me at the very least.
M. Emmett Walsh, who played U.S. Marshal Coleman. He was the guy who was driving the train.
Yes.
Basically, he was the chauffeur at that point. I'm going to let you start on him because I have thoughts.
He was funny. I don't know. His role is basically, like you said, a chauffeur. He peeked in for some of the gags where Will Smith is feeling up Kevin Kline. Very funny. We're making that kind of joke that they're touching each other's breasts. And then it turns out he was a U.S. Marshal all along and was there to help them out and keep an eye on them. I thought he played his role well. Didn't get a ton of airtime, but the times that he came in, he was funny, quick. He convinces them to keep Selma Hayek in the train. So for that, he's doing an all right job.
I got to put this out there. I'm just going to put this out there, okay? Why is he an agent? I don't understand. There is nothing that he does that makes him being an agent also mean anything. He's the chauffeur. He's useless. We didn't need him to be more than he appears to be, because at no point afterwards does he really do anything that warrants him being more than he is. Like, you either give him more to do or don't have that aspect of his character.
Yeah, again, this is where it feels like this is going to be a crazy sentence that I'm saying, considering how bad the movie was received. But it could have been a little longer just to flesh out some of these scenes and characters more if you were going to add a reveal. His whole purpose was just to give them the nitroglycerin bombs that they use in the flying machine at the end to kill the spider. That's it. That was the only reason why him being an agent paid off, I guess. But presumably they could have just gotten the nitroglycerin some other way. It didn't need to be him. It didn't really add much to his character or was not set up in any way. So
yeah, either make him more useful, like for lack of a better term, like Jarvis to Iron Man, right? Be the or Alfred to Batman. Give him more to do.
Guy in a chair as popularized by the Spider-Man movies. Yeah,
exactly. Give him more to do, or don't give him the extra backstory. Don't need it. You said the magic word though. Spider.
Yeah, that is the magic word. A lot of spiders.
Okay. You know why though, right?
I have heard the story, but I do feel it's a story that should always be said when this movie gets brought up.
Okay. So, dear listeners, first things first, I'm going to implore you to watch An Evening with Kevin Smith, because he tells this story about how he was contacted to do basically a script for a Superman film. And this was the Superman film that was supposed to star freaking Nicolas Cage. And it was like, okay, cool. I'm going to write the script. And he had all these things with like Brainiac. And because of course, Kevin Smith is a bit of a comic nerd. If you haven't figured that one out by now, dear listeners. But then they're like, okay, cool. So the producer wants to meet you. And like, again, this is a beautiful story that I'm not doing justice at all. Just go find An Evening with Kevin Smith and watch it so you can enjoy this. But basically the whole premise is this. John Peters, who of course was a producer on Batman, so like obviously big in the DC world and all that, he was going to be, and he is, the producer of this film. But he was also working on that Superman film with Nicolas Cage. And when Kevin Smith read the script to him, apparently John Peters was like, it's cool, but you know what it needs? Spider. I want Superman fighting a giant spider. Because apparently in John Peters' mind, spiders were some of the most vicious, deadly creatures on the face of the planet. Like he just either discovered Wikipedia or was watching the Discovery Channel or something like that, and was adamant that there were going to be all these spiders for Superman to fight in the Superman film that was somehow going to star Nick Cage, which, by the way, there's also a documentary on the death of Superman Lives, which was basically the documentary on the supposed starting to make this film, and then it never actually happened. And of course, we saw Nicolas Cage in The Flash in all his CGI greatness as Superman, for better or for worse. I'm going to say for worse because it was The Flash. But yeah, John Peters was apparently obsessed with spiders, so much so that he wanted it in a Superman film. And when that Superman film didn't happen, guess where the spiders ended up? In the wild, wild west. So if you're wondering why everything's very spider motifed, this film's subtle like a hammer.
Oh yeah, right from the start. The spiders on the White House cake, the spiders on the Loveless flag, spiders, spiders, spiders. The spider in the desert.
Yep. Even the first guy running away, big spider. Gotta tell the president. It's like, oh dear God. Like what? Yeah. When you first watch this film, it's probably not a thing, right? But the minute you watch An Evening with Kevin Smith, and then you go back and watch this, you can't unnotice all the spiders in the damn film.
And it just feels like he was a producer being like, we just got to tip the spiders. Like it's going to pay off so much when they see a giant metal spider. It's going to be the most terrifying thing ever. And obviously it doesn't really come off that way.
Yeah. No, it's a little less terrifying than one might think. And, I'll be the first to admit that, occasionally when I'm doing research for these episodes and you stumble across some really, really weird factoid and you're like, I'm going to work that into the trailerize. I'm going to do it. But, and for those of you who heard our episode on superhero movie and heard me start talking about dragonfly sex, you're welcome. Thank Wikipedia for that. But
I did listen to that recently and was terrified.
Yes.
Because of that Wikipedia.
You should never take everything you read on Wikipedia and put it into a podcast. It's just not a good idea for anybody or for your own psyche, because then you're going to have like nightmares of dragonfly sex and therapy afterwards. But regardless of, the thing is, the film is exactly what it wants to be. A Barry Sonnenfeld, big budget, popcorn flick that I think people expected too much given the cast and the crew. And it's not Men in Black. It's not Men in Black. It was never going to be Men in Black. Don't go in thinking it's Men in Black in the Wild Wild West. It is its own entity, but it's still a ton of fun.
Yeah, I think that's the best thing you can say about the movie, that it is a ton of fun. And you just can't go into it, like you said, thinking that it's Men in Black or any of the other Will Smith things that you were seeing around that time or since. It is its own thing. And I will give it the credit that it's definitely more fun than stuff like I, Robot, which is just a trudge to get through at times. And I say that being a big Will Smith fan. It's a fun movie with some really good, fun actors that were kind of let down by one man's obsession with spiders, perhaps.
I mean, I would actually be one to defend iRobot. And I say that having read a lot of Isaac Asimov's work and knowing to just not really expect much out of a Will Smith film. Like, you go in, just at least you recognize that the 3 laws of robotics are recognized, and then everything kind of revolves around that. I can defend iRobot, and I'm sure at some point I'm going to defend iRobot. I'm calling my shot. It may take us a year or two to get to there, but we'll get there eventually, like we did with this one here. But I think, yes, is it a box office failure compared to the budget that it had? Yes, it is. We can't even work our way around that one. It's there. And even based on the worldwide box office, I don't even know if that 170 million includes marketing. So I'm sure somewhere in there, Hollywood math says it's a bomb. But I think this film probably in the end made its money back from DVD sales, VHS sales, because I had this on VHS for a while, and streaming money as well. Like, I think in hindsight, if you're looking for a fun, family-friendly-esque type film with a lot of action and a lot of gags, they're going to like this film. I think history is going to look back at this film and say, maybe we were a little too harsh on it.
I agree, and I think largely it's because of what you're saying. The expectations, the cast that was billed at the time, especially in the 90s for what they were all doing, made it so people had outsized expectations. But it's a fun romp in the Wild Wild West. If you like the Wild Wild West and you like some action and popcorn stunts, you'll enjoy this film.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when you take a look at the movies that were actually nominated for Worst Picture alongside Wild Wild West, you had Big Daddy, The Blair Witch Project, which again, no. The Haunting, and Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Like, you take a look at those 5 films, and really, some of them shouldn't even be there. I think Star Wars is there because of Jar Jar.
Yeah.
Let's just call it what it is. And that's not on Ahmed Best. And suck it up if you don't like that. Blair Witch Project, what were you expecting? It's a low budget found footage horror film. What the hell were you expecting? Big Daddy, yes, there are issues with that film. And you know me, I'm not the biggest Adam Sandler fan, so I get it. I don't think any of those films, like, you have End of Days released in that same year. That film, you want to put that in for Worst Picture? You know what? Guess what? I'd back you up on that one. But or The World Is Not Enough. Like, there are movies that deserved to be nominated. And I'm telling you right now, one day, it is my goal, dear listeners, to be able to become a voting member for the Razzies. And I promise you, with that power will come great responsibility, and I will vote for movies that properly deserve it, not for the films that are just the box office bombs. One day.
I will be campaigning for that as well. I think you deserve that. Because, you nailed it. Those movies being the ones that were being voted on is crazy. Yeah. No matter how you feel about Adam Sandler, no matter how you feel about darn, one of the other ones just escaped me. But
Blair Witch Project and Star Wars Episode 1. Yeah.
Either of those two. Because again, I was a kid when the prequels came out. And is there problems with them? Yeah. But they're also still fun and cool, and they gave us awesome scenes. Like, you can't watch the Darth Maul, Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan fight scene and not tell me that the score was excellent and it was a fun watch. You just can't. But, sometimes it's just a matter of this bombed at the box office, or it wasn't what we expected. That doesn't mean that's not good, that there's not good stuff for it. And that's my biggest mark for this movie. Yes, it won't. If you go in thinking it's going to be the best movie you've ever seen, you're going to be disappointed. Just go in thinking, I'm going to have fun for an hour and 40 minutes, and then you will.
Oh, yeah. This movie is a straight, utter hour and a half braincation.
Yeah, you don't think about it. You don't critically examine anything that is happening.
I mean, I try not to do that with anything and everything, so I'm already set.
There you go.
By the way, dear listeners, I want to know, because I'm very, very curious. Do you, the listeners, trust me to vote for the Razzies? Hit me up on social media at NotThatBadcast, or go to our website at notthatbadcast.com and drop us a line. I want to know if you want me to put my name in to vote for the Razzies and defend the unfairly maligned and to crap on all the others. Drop us a line. All right, it's time, Ruben. You can't escape this anymore. Who is your MVP of 1999's A Wild Wild West?
Well, honestly, the song that Will Smith made would be my MVP. But no, it's Selma Hayek because, again, I think in the small role that she had, she lit the screen up and was a ton of fun. And she's one of the few actors that you can say, because she was in it so little, she doesn't really have a lot of bad moments. So it's like, yeah, she did her part. She executed it well. I don't think of any bad scenes with her in them. She's a lot of fun. She's my MVP. Sorry, Will Smith.
I mean, you can't mention that song without giving praise to Kool Moe Dee for writing the original.
Oh, I know. That song is awesome.
Right. I would have much rather have had the original Kool Moe Dee Wild Wild West on here, but I'm fine. I'm fine with Will Smith. It's all good. Also not my MVP. My MVP is actually Kevin Kline. Like, I don't care what the Razzies or the Stinkers say. I think Kevin Kline is the perfect actor for this role. I find he brings a prestige to Artemis Gordon. And I'm not saying that the others wouldn't, but I think he brings a prestige at a comedic level. Yes, Tim Curry would have been fine, but I think Tim Curry would have been too big for the role. I think Kevin Kline blended in perfectly, played well off of Will Smith and off of Selma Hayek. Kudos to Kevin Kline. Ruben, thank you so much for finally giving me the chance to talk about this film. Now, before we go, please let our listeners know what you've been up to since the last time you were here.
Well, I'm still at the College of Sports Media, but almost about to graduate. If you want to follow me on socials, I'm on Twitter at Ray Chavo. I sometimes release music. I'm releasing more just sports-based stuff. And you can follow me on Instagram as well at RayChavo_13. And on YouTube, I have a channel which is just Ray Chavo as well. But yeah, follow me on Twitter. You could get links to all the other stuff. And I'm going to try to be on this podcast more. I will release my own things, mostly talking about sports. But I do pop culture too. I talk about music and stuff that I like. So follow me if you enjoy my opinions.
Oh, you know you're going to be back because you mentioned Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Well, no, actually, I just voluntold you for that one. So you're welcome.
The only reason that I hadn't mentioned it before is because I don't know if I want to subject Jason to that if he's not on board to do Mortal Kombat Annihilation, but I would love to do Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
Dude, I had a family member make me watch Baby Geniuses. I am ready for everything.
That's fair. That's fair.
All right. And to you, our listeners, you guys know the drill. If there is a movie out there that you think is unfairly maligned or is just so bad that there is no way in the Wild Wild West that we can find anything good to say about it, hit us up on social media at NotThatBadcast or go to our website at NotThatBadcast.com. And while you're there, check out our Coming Soon page so you can get your votes in and get your thoughts out there as to the movies and the other episodes that we're preparing so we can shout you out in the show. Until next time, he's Ruben, I'm Jay, you guys are awesome. This is It's Not That Bad, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. Take care.
What would you do to achieve the American dream? The big house, the happy family, the money.
911, what's your emergency?
Would you put in the hours? Would you take a big swing?
What's the problem? What's the problem?
Would you lie? Would you cheat?
Were they shot? Were they shot?
Would you kill?
Yes. My mom is dead. My mom is right there.
From Airship, the studio behind American Scandal, comes a new true crime history podcast. I'm Jeremy Schwartz, and I'll be taking you inside the minds of some of our most notorious felons and outlaws, exploring the dark side of the American dream. In my new show, American Criminal, you'll meet the picture-perfect brothers who killed their parents, the thief who stole babies, the crypto king who siphoned off billions, and plenty more. From assassins and gangsters to killers and con artists. Whatever the case, whoever the criminal, you don't know the full story. Until now. Don't miss the debut season of American Criminal, The Menendez Brothers, beginning February 29th. Listen wherever you get your podcasts Or to get early ad-free access to the entire season first, plus hundreds of other ad-free history podcast episodes, subscribe at intohistory.com.